Next time, baby.
What's up everyone? Today we're going to dive into some MCU drama you might have missed. So here's the scoop. The original War Machine aka James Rhodey was played by none other than Academy Award nominee Terrence Howard, but as you probably know, he got replaced by another Academy Award nominee Don Cheadle for the rest of the MCU. So you might be thinking, yeah, I know they switched actors, but why? Well, that's where things get juicy. Turns out, there's a lot more to it than just a simple recasting. Terrence Howard was quickly shown the door after the first Iron Man film. It's not just someone thought Don Cheadle would be a better in the suit. Behind the scenes of these massive franchises, there's often a lot of drama that doesn't make it to the big screen. The media loves to rip it apart, this big family image they try to sell us. So stick around, I will break down what really went down and why Terrence Howard didn't return as War Machine. Let's get into it. So acting in big movies means signing some massive contracts worth millions. With that kind of cash on the line, things can get pretty tense behind the scenes. Studios use tricky correct language to keep control over what they pay their actors, so having leverage is super important. Now let's talk about Terrence Howard. When he started working on Iron Man, he was fresh off an Academy Award nomination for Hustle and Flow. Getting nominated for an Oscar can really boost an actor's worth, and that usually means a higher pay rate. This is why actors chase these awards. They're not about just glory, but the big bucks too. Now let's get real for those Oscars. Sure, they want to be a great actors, and winning the top award is a huge honor, but having an Oscar winner on their resume also means they can change a lot for more for their performances.
I thank you all for this amazing award tonight. Let us not take this planet for granted. I do not take tonight for granted. Thank you so very much.
Take Terrence Howard for example. By the time Iron Man started filming, his rate was set around $3.5 million to $4.5 million for his role. This made him the highest paid actor in the film, earning over 6 times more than Robert Downey Jr. That's right, RDJ, who is now one of the most famous actors in the world, was making a big comeback at the time. He only got $500,000 for his role in the first Iron Man movie. Crazy, right? The movie was a huge hit with both critics and fans, and it kickstarted the biggest and most successful cinematic universe ever. When a movie like Iron Man does well, it's usually a win-win for everyone. Directors and producers get bigger budgets for sequels, and the actors typically see a nice pay raise, especially when the movie grosses over $300 million, like Iron Man did. Normally, success like this means enormous contracts for the main actors. For example, Robert Downey Jr. reported made $10 million for Iron Man 2, which is a $200,000 pay increase. Plus, he negotiated a sweet backhand deal to earn even more based on the film's box office revenue. But here's the twist. While RDJ's pay skyrocketed, Terrence Howard, who played Rhodey in the first film, was actually offered a big pay cut for the sequel. Marvel eventually offered Terrence Howard only $1 million to return as War Machine. That's way less than the $8 million he thought he was going to get. Based on talks between him and his agent and the studio, it was even less than what he made for the first film. Now here's where things gets messy. Rumors has it that Iron Man director Jon Favreau wasn't too happy with Terrence Howard's performance. Favreau spent a lot of time cutting down Howard's scenes and post-production. This probably played a big part in the drastic pay cut offer. If a studio is shelling out big bucks for a big name actor, they expect that actor to have a significant presence in the film, especially for marketing purposes. But when directors and editors cut down an actor's screen time, it makes those hefty contracts look less justified. Allegedly, Iron Man director Jon Favreau was so unhappy with Terrence Howard's performance that he and Iron Man 2 writer decided to reduce Rhodey's scenes in the sequel. They did this assuming Howard would play still James Rhodes. Once Marvel Studios realized War Machine's role would be smaller, they offered Howard's agent a counter-proposal way below the $8 million he expected. They aimed to pay what they thought was a fair for a supporting actor at the time, just $1 million. Once Marvel Studios realized War Machine's role would be smaller, they offered Howard's agent a counter-proposal way below the $8 million he expected. They aimed to pay what they thought was a fair for a supporting actor at the time, just $1 million.
And they didn't want to pay you what you wanted the second time around?
No, the second time they came and they said, we think the movie would be successful with or without you. So instead of the $8 million that we've said we're going to pay you, we're going to let you come back for $1 million.
But it seems Howard's agents and publicists wanted to ensure he was paid fairly in line with the rest of the leading cast. They also wanted to make sure his future roles would benefit from a larger contract, not diminishing his earning potential in upcoming films. When Marvel came back with the lowball $1 million offer, it wasn't just about the immediate pay cut, it was about setting a precedent for his future earnings. Howard and his team decided to walk away due to his financial dispute. So Marvel says, enter Don Cheadle, who happily stepped as War Machine for Iron Man 2 with that $1 million offer, and guess what? The decision paid out big time. Since then, Cheadle has reportedly earned over $40 million for his work in the MCU, and his role even landed him an Emmy nomination for his performance in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So while Terrence Howard's exit was a bit messy, it opened doors for John Cheadle to shine and take some serious cash. There's another twist in the Terrence Howard and Iron Man drama. In a Joe Rogan interview, Howard claimed he was the one who recommended Robert Downey Jr. for the role of Iron Man, despite the messy exit.
When I was doing the Brave one with Jodie Foster, Susan Downey was a producer with Joe Silver. She comes over to my trailer and she's like, wow, it's so amazing. Congratulations on Iron Man. It's the first time they've hired the second lead before they've hired the first. But Robert wants to go in there. And they were talking about Clive Davis and all of that. And I was like, okay, great. You know, I'm just moving along doing my thing. And she was like, but Robert really wants to go in, but they won't see him. And I was like, I love Robert. I love what he does. I loved him in Weird Science. I loved him.
Who did they want?
They wanted Robert. Clive Davis to play him. Because remember, in the series, War Machine was supposed to take over. Right. And I'm like, well, if Robert wants to come in, so I called Avi Arad immediately. He was the producer on it. And I'm like, Avi, I hear Robert wants to come in, but you guys won't even let him audition. He's like, no, we can't bond him. I'm like, instead of the $4.5 million you want to give me, why don't you take $1 million for the bond for him? If he get, and let him audition, you know, and so he gets the part. Robert is like, I love you, thank you so much, da 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 da. Well, when this other thing happened, I'm calling Robert, and he's doing Sherlock Holmes. I called him 27 times, and I'm like, and leave a message. I'm calling his assistant. I'm like, I need the help I gave you. I didn't hear from him until 3 years later. I bumped into him at Brian Grazier's wedding.
He expressed that he was unhappy with how things turned out. In the interview, Howard almost takes a bit of credit for RDJ's success. So while Howard might have missed out on the continued role of War Machine, he seems to take some satisfaction in knowing he played a big part and bring RDJ in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. According to John Paris, at one point, Marvel was adamant that they wouldn't hire Robert Downey Jr. for any price, so maybe Howard's claim about recommending Robert Downey Jr. has some truth to it, but we will never really know the full story. As Marvel became more successful, Howard's frustration seems to grow. The more those movies ranked at the box office, the more Howard lashed out against Marvel and the media.
Now that you seem to be cool with Robert Downey Jr. again, is there any chance you come back and do an Iron Man or Avenger movie?
You know what's so funny? Even though I love Don Cheadle so much and I love what he's done, I still hear a lot of fans asking, am I going to come back and be War Machine? Yeah. Am I going to come back and be War Machine? I think they could have a huge franchise off of it, but
It was clear that the success of Marvel films only fueled Howard's resentment, making some very candid and dramatic interviews over the years. So while Robert Downey Jr. rose, Howard's frustrations with Marvel handling of his contract only grew further. The reality of the situation is probably much simpler than all the rumors and speculations. Terrence Howard was let go from Iron Man because he didn't deliver the performance the studio wanted. And let's face it, nobody likes it, being told they're not cutting it. Robert Downey Jr. on the other hand stayed quiet about the whole thing. He didn't want to mess up his chance at redemption after his past struggles with addiction. At the end of the day, studios are all about making money. These big budget films operate on tight budgets, and keeping Howard on board would cost him a pretty penny for a character with a small role in the grand scheme of things. So replacing him was just a smart business move that saved Marvel a ton of cash. Let's wrap up this discussion with some reflection. At the end of the day, what we see on screen is a result of people doing their job. Yes, they're artists, but also employees of the studio once those contracts are signed. The ease with which Marvel replaced Terrence Howard does raise some questions about how they value performances. Versus money, it's hard to say exactly what Jon Favreau and the studio saw in Howard's performance that made him decide it wasn't working. Not everything in art is fixable, and it's easier or maybe even better to just move on. So while it's interesting to speculate on the behind-the-scenes drama, let's not forget, filmmaking is a complex process with many moving parts. And with that, we'll wrap up today's discussion. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe button and be sure to subscribe for more content. Until next time.
Next time, baby.